Today, we're going to be facing down my personal nemesis, conclusion paragraphs. Conclusions. Welcome back to the Writing Lab. I don't know what it is about conclusions. For some reason, they always seem like the hardest paragraph of the essay to write. And they're the hardest paragraph to teach. I think one of the reasons they're such a pain in the behind is that with introduction paragraphs and body paragraphs, you have a fairly easy to follow formula that most of the time leads to something pretty decent. But the quick and easy formula for conclusion paragraphs usually leads to something that's, well, kind of lame and boring. The textbook easy format for conclusion paragraphs looks something like this. Restate your thesis statement in slightly different words. Restate your first main idea. Restate your second main idea. Restate your third main idea. And then just kind of trail off like my grandma does when she forgets what she was talking about because even she thought it was boring. No offense, Grandma. Here's the thing. That review of what you've talked about is actually kind of important. That's why at the end of a trial, a good lawyer will give a closing statement that reviews all of the evidence for the jury. But if that review is all you have, it leaves you with a pretty lackluster final paragraph. And the last thing you want is an awesome essay that ends with a final paragraph that's a total dud. So we need to find a way to wrap that final paragraph up in a way that's meaningful and interesting. We need to find a way to make it sound less like a lame rehash and more like a epic drop the mic moment.
Yeah, that's right. I just said that.
Like I said, as an English teacher, I struggle with teaching students how to write effective conclusion paragraphs. But what I can do is help you understand the purposes and goals your conclusion should accomplish, and then give you a toolbox of effective strategies I've seen work in the past. Let's think first about the purpose of a conclusion. All too often, we write a conclusion paragraph just because our teacher requires us to do it. But think back to that example of lawyers giving closing statements at the end of a trial. Obviously, they're not just doing that because the judge requires them to have a conclusion. That closing statement is their final chance to take the evidence that's been presented and frame it in the way they want the jury to see it. It's their final chance to drive home the points they've been trying to prove. It's their final chance to make an emotional appeal to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury. It's their final chance to try to win the case. So in an essay, you need to think about your purpose in writing. What are you trying to accomplish with the essay as a whole? Your conclusion is your final chance to make sure you have thoroughly accomplished that purpose. In closing statements at the end of a trial, lawyers will usually review the evidence they've presented during the case, and then encourage the jury to interpret that evidence in a certain way by giving them some final food for thought. In a conclusion paragraph, reviewing your thesis statement and the evidence you've presented is the easy part. The hard part is coming up with that final food for thought element. So let's look at a few strategies you could use to pull that off. Imagine we're working on a research paper for our US history class about World War II, and our thesis statement looks something like this. The decision to use atomic bombs at the end of World War II was the most controversial act of Harry Truman's presidency, but the decision was necessary because it was the only way to bring an end to the most deadly war in history. Think back to your thesis statement and then imagine a skeptical reader asking you,
Okay, so what?
Why does anything you've just said in your essay matter? Why is it important or meaningful? What effect does it have on something else? Why should someone care? Get out some paper and brainstorm some answers to those questions. A lot of times, you'll come up with an idea that could work as a strong closing sentence or two for your concluding paragraph. Let's see, why does this matter? Well, this decision to use nuclear bombs in war led to the United States being the military superpower it is today. The morality of this decision could be the deciding factor in Truman's presidential legacy. Maybe it matters because this decision to use nuclear bombs at the end of World War II might be one reason we have never had another world war since then. Let's go with that one. Maybe the last few lines of our conclusion paragraph could look something like this. Truman's decision to use atomic bombs against Japan brought an end to the rising death toll of World War II. Significantly, the war ended over 70 years ago, and since then, we have not had another worldwide conflict of that scale. Perhaps that is the true legacy of Truman's decision to use such a devastating weapon. It created a new world in which military superpowers think twice before starting bloody conflicts. One way to show that what you've said in your essay matters is by directly telling your audience to go out and do something about it. You're challenging them to change their behavior or change their way of thinking because of what you've just said. In the end, the morality and ethics of Truman's decision to obliterate 2 Japanese cities will probably be debated forever. But one thing is certain. We know now that the President of the United States, indeed the leader of any nuclear-armed nation, holds responsibility over a terrifying power. And that means that we as citizens, as voters, also have a terrifying responsibility. We must vote for leaders who we feel will treat that power and responsibility with the respect they deserve. Another effective strategy for giving your essay a meaningful ending could be to show how your topic might have broader implications or specific applications. An implication is something that is suggested or implied. You've just argued in your essay that President Truman made the right decision by choosing to use atomic bombs at the end of World War II. What broad ideas could we imply from that? Your essay might end like this. The lesson we could learn here is that sometimes, as individuals or as a society, we must do something terrible in order to prevent something even more terrible. A specific application, on the other hand, is where you take knowledge or information and put it to some specific use. If Truman's decision was the right decision in that situation, how might that apply today? Your essay could end like this. Does this mean that the United States should be using atomic bombs to end conflicts more often? Certainly not. The world has changed since August of 1945. If a president today, in a conflict with Russia, North Korea, or China, for example, faced the same decision Truman faced at the end of World War II, using the nukes would certainly not be the most ethical choice. At that time, Truman's decision was the only viable way to end violent conflict. Today, in the nuclear age, that same decision could escalate the conflict to world-destroying proportions. That's 3 strategies in your toolbox. Let's practice with those, and then next time we'll look over some more. It's time to go to work.
Might as well